Hi, welcome to the Jeff and Jerry Show. My name is Jeff. I'm the Borough Manager of Mount Pleasant, and my co-host Jerry Lucia would be proud that I'm here today because today we're going to be at something that was close to Jerry's heart, and everybody saw him in Mount Pleasant. He was the fire chief. We are at the Fire Academy Training Center in Spithton, PA, and I have a guest today from the state, and you are?
Hi, I'm Thomas Cook. I am the administrator of the Pennsylvania State Fire Academy.
Okay, and today we're here today, Tom, to talk a little bit about the training that's being done here for people that are in the fire departments. Is that correct?
That is correct. So today is a demonstration day where we're putting local representatives, state representatives, and some of the executive staff from the Westmoreland County Community College through the paces. We're doing a demonstration of what basic fire training looks like so that the people that have to support and fund the operation have an awareness of what we do with our firefighters. But what they're going to do today is the same basic training evolution. It's done at the end of what we call our entry-level firefighter training, where they actually go inside a building, just like real firefighters do, and extinguish a fire inside the building.
Now, we had spoke prior to the show a little bit about the idea of the training portion of fire departments. And when I go around and I talk to other fire departments, it is a big commitment.
Yes.
From the volunteers, you know, especially in our area. A lot of volunteers take a lot of their time to be trained. But really, how important is the training?
So the training is extremely important, number one, and I don't say that just as a training person. I've got close to 40 years of actual street experience as a firefighter, volunteer in career fire departments throughout my 40 years. But the reason training is so important is because when you take a human being and you put them under stress, they typically behave the way they were taught and they practiced to behave. So part of fire training is not just how do we introduce new techniques to people, it's how do we make them repeat those techniques until they become what we call muscle memory.
Right.
Then it becomes non-thinking action.
And probably in the case of what we're going to be here today, seeing them go into a burning building, you don't want to necessarily have to think of every step and everything ahead of time. You want to be able to react based on your experience and knowledge, and it just automatically happens.
And that is correct. And what we're seeing, not just in Pennsylvania, but nationwide, the total number of fires that actually happen is going down. So that means getting that repetition in training becomes that much more important, because we're not getting that street experience where when I joined 40 years ago, we would go to a fire every shift. Now a career fire department may get a fire once a month in some cases. So training, the repetition in training keeps those skills honed sharp so that when they do have that fire, they can perform.
How many hours of training is a normal volunteer fireman have to have, let's just say, per year?
So with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the state of Pennsylvania, there are no training requirements for volunteer firefighters. So it's up to the fire chief at each individual fire department to set that standard. All right. Now, if you look at the National Fire Protection Association, the 1001, which is the firefighter standard, there are job performance requirements established to meet their definition of a firefighter. So the firefighters need to be initially trained on all those job performance requirements. And then the standard says that they should exercise those skills at least once per year. So there really is no time requirement set in the standard. The time comes based on how much time does it take to teach to those JPRs in the standard.
And probably everybody is different in that training aspect, just like everybody who goes to school is different. Some people have to study more, some people don't have to study as much. So the fire chief determines what his department, what his volunteers have to do to keep up, and he probably does that through just experience with them and says, well, we need more training on this or whatever.
Yeah, that would be the way it should work, yes. So what we've done with the state training system in our entry-level training for new firefighters is we've taken a look at that 1001 NFPA standard. We looked at those JPRs, And we've written, great English, right? We've written a curriculum.
I talk that way too, believe me.
We've written a curriculum that the total firefighting part is about 166 hours, okay? But it's broken up into 4 separate classes, and the hours vary between the classes from 16 all the way up to 62 in one of the classes. And the idea is, so the first class is their introduction to the fire service. What can we teach them so that they can get on the fire truck and ride to a call as an observer and be safe? The next step is what we call fireground support is the name of the class. So now we start to introduce them to more skills so that when they do get to the call, they can participate in a support function but not necessarily engage in the firefighting itself. The third class is what we call exterior firefighting. So now they're qualified to, extinguish exterior fires or get on a hose line and squirt water through a window from the outside, but it's still kind of a support role. And then the final module is their interior firefighting module, which when they graduate from that, they should be able to pass the certification test to that national standard as a firefighter 1.
How much does technology mean and equipment mean to a fire department when you're talking about the 2 components, the person being trained, and then there's the other component, I think, of the equipment and the technology? Can you give me an idea of how important each one is?
Well, they're both equally important, right? So I could give people all the most modern technological equipment in the world, and if they're not trained to use it, they're not going to be effective on the fire ground. And I think in my 40 years, technology has changed a lot when you look at, how fire trucks are engineered and designed, how the gear is engineered and designed, the breathing apparatus that we wear to protect our lungs and our respiratory system. Thermal imagers were brand new when I started 40 years ago, and they were very big and very bulky. And now, we have, small, in fact, there's actually a new prototype out that's a heads-up display as part of the breathing apparatus facepiece. So, technology plays a huge role in what we're able to do on the fire ground. But if we don't train them to use it,
right,
it doesn't matter.
The breathing apparatus, real quick. If it's not a good breathing apparatus, you're talking about a person that's going to be breathing all kind of different chemicals that fires create. Am I correct?
That is correct.
So
yeah.
Health-wise, you look at people who go. You talk about people who fight wars in the Vietnam and got Agent Orange or whatever, and later on we find out those people are really sick. How important is the breathing apparatus for something like this?
It's extremely important because right now the leading cause of death, not line of duty death, but just death in general for firefighters is cancer. So depending upon what type of cancer you're talking about, a firefighter is 400% more likely to die of cancer than the average citizen. All right. So how do we protect ourselves? We have to wear our protective equipment. And you're going to see them go through as they come out of the environment at the end of the training today, what we call a contaminant reduction process, where we actually scrub them before we let them take the turnout gear off to remove those carcinogens and chemical particulate matter from the turnout gear so that we're trying to improve the health and wellness aspect of the job.
And it's almost the same aspect as when someone goes in and cleans a nuclear reactor. They have to scrub down at the end before they can get out and all that.
Same concept, but not quite as immediately hazardous to your health.
Well, listen, I appreciate the time you gave us today. We're getting ready to now film some more segments of the show. But thanks again for coming, and thanks for your perspective. And the next segment of the show will be a chance for us to see the building being lit, I believe, and some of the people in there fighting this training fire that we're here for today. Hi, this part of the show on the Jeff and Jerry Show now is where the people that are going to experience what it's like being in a burning building has now moved into the building, and our guest right now for this segment is...
I'm Chris Tantlinger with the Westmoreland County Hazardous Materials Response Team, and also a member of the Department of Public Safety as the Deputy Emergency Coordinator. And this portion of the training They are reviewing fire dynamics. They're creating a small fire to understand how the fire reacts to certain ventilation concerns, and also as the heat builds and the smoke builds, they are looking at how the fire progresses. They'll be able to see the timing of which once the combustion starts and then moves through as it's fed oxygen, and then becomes more and more a area of concern that will need to be taken care of with the suppression part of it. The materials that they use in here are just light combustibles. They wouldn't find like you would have in your home with plastics and other type of materials that actually create an even more dangerous atmosphere. But you can still see the dynamics of the fire with these combustibles, and it makes for a very good training experience, especially for new firefighters and for several evolutions of training as you go through the process.
Chris, not all fires are the same, though. I mean, so this training that's being done here right now just gives an overall generality of what you can experience in a fire. But really, aren't all fires differently when they go in?
Yeah, every fire is different. There can be conditions within the structures that, let's say, a hoarding condition, and that fire is going to progress more rapidly.
Or chemicals or paint that was in the area.
Absolutely. Those things can become explosive in nature. You can have situations where as the smoke is actually carrying the particulates of fuel from the plastics that are burning, and then they could ignite in what would be basically a vapor explosion based on the materials that are in there.
We can notice behind us that you can see the smoke coming out of one of the so-called windows at this point, right?
Yes.
How hot is the fire that they are experiencing right now?
So you could probably see it reaching 800 to 900 degrees, maybe up to 1,300 degrees at some point. This is very well controlled in this setting, but there is situations in which you can reach 2,000 degrees in some structure fires very easily.
Would that be because of the weather and the wind and all that? Would that cause the fire to be
It would be
hotter?
mostly based on the construction materials that are in the structure or whatever is existing in there.
Okay, and I know you've been in the room during this. So what are they doing now that you can tell us what's going on?
So they're being led by state fire suppression instructors to take a look at the fire progression and how it reacts and how it builds, and then how the smoke begins to collect and then push down in the room. So just as we are always concerned about having fire detectors in our home, this would be a good opportunity to see how well a fire detector would work in your home, because you would see how the smoke becomes more and more prevalent, and it becomes more and more difficult to survive that type of atmosphere.
So we all have been around fires, campfires or whatever fire, burning some things. It burns your eyes. Sometimes it gets in your nose, or depending on how you breathe. How much? What is each person carrying with them? I believe they're carrying a tank, and they're carrying clothes. So can you describe a little bit about the outfit, the uniform, and the tank that they have on, and the mask, real quick?
Sure. They call it turnout gear, and inside the gear there's several layers. And one of the layers is a thermal barrier, and another one's a moisture barrier, and then another one is the one that's actually the fire retardant material. And all those three layers you don, and then with that you wear a protective covering over your head they call a Nomex hood. And then with that you then don breathing apparatus.
And boots. I
Yes,
believe boots too,
of course.
right?
There are fire boots that you wear with that as well, and fire gloves that are all rated.
So how much does all that weigh that someone's carrying with them into a fire?
So depending on the type of SCBA or the different layers that you wear, you could be 90 pounds to 125 pounds that you could be carrying on there. For instance, in the hazmat response, we use a 1 hour cylinder. It's a much larger cylinder. They are using a half-hour cylinder, so they have a much smaller cylinder on their back to be able to do that initial fire knockdown.
Now, I believe there's a system set up. Let's say there's 5 firefighters go into a fire. Each one has a tag. Is it called a tag-out system?
Yeah, an accountability system.
An accountability system. So if there's 5 that goes in, there's a safety officer expects 5 to come out, and if someone doesn't come out to get that other tag, then you guys know, the firefighters know, or the chief knows that there's somebody still in there.
Yeah, so right now we can actually hear what are devices that are called pass devices, and those devices will sound if a firefighter no longer can move. And now they're firing up a fan. They're going to do an air decontamination. It's to blow off the particulates from the fire. You see, they'll approach the fan with their hands in the air, and then they'll do a 360, and that is to blow off the smoke and particles in there. Now this is only about a 75% reduction in that. We use water to finish off that decontamination, but in a training evolution, this is the standard decontamination procedure that we start with.
Now, they were in there for about 8-9 minutes. Is that about what it was?
Yes.
What's the normal? Somebody goes in and fights a fire. Is it normally a shift where they take shifts, or is it normally maybe that long, or is it longer?
It's based on the conditions, and the incident command will make that decision about how long they are in there. Now, obviously, with a 30-minute cylinder on your back, if you're breathing hard and you're working hard, you may only be in there for 15 minutes, but you'll be alerted by what they call a quarter service alarm on your cylinder, and it'll let you know that you need to exit the building. And also inside the breathing apparatus mask are lights that gives you a heads-up display on the amount of air that's in your breathing apparatus.
Okay, and some masks have an infrared camera on it, correct? So that the firefighter can see through the smoke a little bit better?
So we haven't received any of those yet, but they have a handheld device that does that.
Okay.
And they're thermal imaging cameras, and they allow you to see the heat differential within the room, even though if it's filled with smoke. But they won't see through glass. That's the only concern with them.
Now, real quickly, we got a couple of minutes left. Hazmat. You're part of the hazmat team?
That's correct.
Okay, and the hazmat is sort of whenever there's really a serious situation, hazmat comes in and they become responders too also. Is that right?
Right, yeah. We assist the fire department with air monitoring. Let's say there's a gas leak in a fire. We need to do additional air monitoring in the area. Also, if there's toxic chemicals involved, then we are trained to go in and mitigate them and remove them with additional equipment that we have that we'll bring to the scene.
So they're sort of like the super response team.
Yeah, the special forces of the
fire department.
of the fire service. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks, Chris, for your knowledge and for letting us know what's going on in that building that we couldn't see. And I hope everybody got a really good perspective, and we're going to get a better one with one of the firefighters that was in that building when all that was going on, and we'll talk to him next.
Thanks, you.
Thanks, man.
Okay. Hope that helped.
Okay, our final part of the show is we're going to talk to a gentleman who everybody in the area probably knows, but I'll let him introduce himself. He just came out of the building that we shot earlier, and he's going to give us a little bit of firsthand knowledge of what was going on in there. And we're going to talk to him a little bit later on about his perspective and maybe what he can do to help this whole firefighting and all that issues that they have. So, I know you, but I'll let you introduce yourself.
State Representative Eric DeVanzo from the 58th Legislative District. I cover the southern part of Westmoreland County from Ross Draver, Monessen, Mount Pleasant Borough. I have 3 or 4 pieces of Mount Pleasant Township as well. So
okay, so Eric, you're not a firefighter,
correct?
Right?
No, I am not.
So
and I have a different aspect of them after today.
Well,
I can tell you that
and I'm sure you do. But I mean, I admire you for going in there and going through that whole scenario. So let's just say real quick, how was it? What did you experience?
It was, I don't want to say extreme. It was really, you go in there and you sit there and just a couple pallets and you're watching them go as they simulate the fire. And as they describe what's going on with that fire, most people just think, and I heard them saying in there, what you put the wet stuff on the red stuff. And really when you're in there, it's understanding the fire, knowing, how you can choke it off without even putting water on it. And the heat was almost unbearable.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was high. I know we had the thermal imaging, and down at the bottom where we were at, it was like 250, but up above it was close to 800, over 800 degrees.
800 degrees. Now, you're a bigger gentleman, okay? And they were telling me that it's about 90 to 120 pounds you have on you.
Yes.
So describe the weight and the intensity of the fire and how you felt.
Yeah, so actually inside when I got dressed, I had to take my gear off because I was just so much heat and the weight. I had to come outside just so I could breathe. Now once we got on the air, I was fine. But just walking up the steps, and I probably had this gear on 40 minutes. I can feel it in my shoulders. I can feel it in my body. So, nothing more like a physical activity like is to really know how far out of shape you are.
Right. Or what the other way to look at it is
how much more we don't appreciate those guys when they put their body through.
That's my point. You're right.
Yeah, that's exactly right with that.
So you're a legislator and you're very active in Harrisburg and in our area. So what you've learned today, what do you feel like you want to take back to Harrisburg?
Well, one of the reasons that we wanted to do today, and we actually want to bring the policy committee out in the fall. We'll bring more legislators out. And some of the things that I like to do is why I'm active. It's because I want to get to the front lines. I want to see the people on the front lines. What exactly is going on? Because, as a policymaker, you can talk over the phone and you can think you know what's going on. But until you're actually sitting in that room and seeing those flames come above you, funding's a big issue, safety's a big issue. And these are things that I want to get the right people into the right room so that we can make sure that we're being good stewards with taxpayer money, right?
Right.
Making sure that we are being as efficient as we can and, doing the right thing for everybody.
A lot of people, and you've heard it, probably why you got into the politics part of it, is they really don't know what we're doing. They sit in Harrisburg and make decisions for us, but they really don't know.
Cool.
You've taken the approach today and in the future is you want to say, I saw or I felt or I was there or I understand. I think that's so important, and I wish everybody in Harrisburg felt the same and would do the same thing because it's hard to make a decision and not know what it's all about. I mean, you can sit back in your office all day long and still not have what you felt today. Am I right?
Yeah, listen, that's exactly right. I try to educate myself every day on things because, listen, I don't know everything, nor do I claim to know everything. Yeah. But one thing I do want to do is I want to make sure that I surround myself with the resources, surround myself with the right information so that when the time comes, I can really make the best decision possible with what I have and all my resources around me.
If there's anything that you can say right now other than what you said, what kind of funding do you see that they need?
Well, everybody thinks that when they come to me that I have a blank check.
You don't?
That was true.
Well, I was going to talk to you after the show.
Really, and I don't. And it's being responsible with the money, and it's also, is there things we can do on a fundraising side for you guys? I know we have some things with the COVID. There's some waivers that are going to come out. We're looking to extend them. Things like that. And funding. It's really, according to what everybody says, and you guys are doing your job, but we just can't give enough money. And
no.
Listen, that's what everybody's doing. But at the same point in time, we got to be like, okay, listen, there has to be a number that we can all agree on that you guys need to survive.
And there's also creative ways.
Correct.
To make things happen. And I know that sometimes money is not the answer to throw money.
Correct.
It is the answer to fund it the correct way, but also be creative on how you use it and other ways to spend money.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you know, once you're in that building and you see those flames over your head, you know, you have a whole different aspect of these gloves and the clothes and that mask, you know, too. So it's just, you want to make sure that we're giving people the right gear to go into these buildings, you know, because you never know. That could be us, one of our loved ones could be in that bedroom that they're going into.
Right. And, you know, sometimes it's not this end of the equation, it's the other end of the equation. Maybe there's a better way, maybe there's other companies out there who can supply equipment at a cheaper.
Correct.
Not necessarily whatever somebody asked for. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that really gets down to the networking, right? You got to get out, you make your connections. And, you know, people say to me, boy, you're all over the state, you're everywhere. And that's exactly why. Is there something we can do that we can bring a network of people together? Can we save taxpayers money? Can we be more efficiently? And ultimately, can we save more lives? Because the more things we can do on the back end, you see better results.
Well, I think sometimes people lose a perspective of the fire department. Because there probably is less fires. We were talking to someone earlier. There's less fires right now. So you see fire departments at a scene of an accident, and you see fire departments helping the community with setting up for different things. But they forget that the firefighters' first response and first reason to be there is for the emergency and fighting fires and all that. And so sometimes that's lost in the perspective of people. But I think you've taken that approach, and maybe this show will take that approach in teaching people how important it is to have a well-equipped, well-trained fire department.
Yeah, you know, and that's exactly right. And one of the things, too, that we are seeing across the state is the lack of bringing our junior firemen in.
Yeah.
You know, just awareness to the fact that one day, if you have to make that call, what if there's nobody on the other end of the line of phone there? So, you know, that's some of the things that I want to, moving forward as we get out of this pre-COVID stage and really move forward. You know, how can we bring awareness to it? How can we get our kids from the VOTECs, from the high schools, you know, get them out into our programs?
Well, thanks for telling us what's going on and giving us your perspective.
Definitely.
Keep doing a good job in Harrisburg.
We'll do that.
And I want all the watchers and listeners to know that I wanted to go into that fire, but Armstrong was worried. You know, the amount of bond they have on me and the insurance they have on me, they would not permit me. But I would have went in, Eric. I'd have been right behind you.
I'm sure you would have been.
Okay.
I'm sure you would have been.
Well, I hope everybody enjoyed this show and learned a lot. Jerry would have been proud of this show again because he was first and foremost a fire chief in Mount Pleasant. And Jerry, I hope you had a good time watching the show like you always do. So for Jeff and Jerry, I hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next time.